Yes, time now to talk movies, Freeview movies you can watch in your front room, maybe through your fingers if you're watching horror films recommended by me, Paul Ross, and Van Connor, one of the country's leading film critics. We do it each and every Friday, 3 films from Van, 3 from me, and we meet in the middle. Good morning, Van. You started with, well, not exactly a horror film, but a very disturbing film indeed for your first pick. How are you doing, Van? How are things?
I can't complain, Mr. Ross. It's Halloween weekend. You know, it's a weekend of the year that I'm just geared up and built for. I'm going to be Jack Sparrow this year due to a lack of options, but I love Halloween. I'm a big fan.
And, of course, you've been giving us a countdown of some of your favourite Halloween films, haven't you, via your podcast?
Well, of course, and also I've been doing a thing this year called the 12 Days of Halloween on social platforms where I'm picking a different horror movie that me and the gang love every single day. So we've got to talk about some absolutely awesome ones. But for our purposes, even though our first pick is not specifically a horror film per se, it is a dark, depraved, nasty psychological chiller. So I think it fits with our Halloween-y purposes. So as we said, American Psycho with Christian Bale as our first one for this week. This is on tonight on Film 4 at 11:05. And this is, for my money, the role that Christian Bale is always going to be known for. I think more people will remember him as Patrick Bateman than will ever remember him as being Batman. And this is based on Bret Easton Ellis's seminal novel of the yuppie stockbroker in the 1980s, in the capitalist yuppie heydays, who just also happens to be a complete psychopath and a serial killer. Have you seen this one, Paul?
I have seen it. I've read the novel as well. I mean, it's not a film I'd return to that often. I haven't seen it for a few years, so I might well catch it tonight when it's on. But it's one of those, it gets under your skin, this one. It's also a great kind of horribly dark satire on the whole consumerism, yuppie excesses of that particular era. I mean, he nails that brilliantly, I think. And I'm still in two minds as to whether, when you read the book, whether it's actually fantasy or whether he's genuinely a serial killer. In the film, of course, he's genuinely a serial killer. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, they do. They make no bones about it in the film. I think the film is absolutely tremendous. The way in which it explores the relationship between sex and violence in particular, this is going to come up with that clip in a minute, I think is genuinely revelatory. The reason I think that I might love this film a lot more than yourselves is I think every generation has this movie, but they have their own version. So I think your generation has Taxi Driver. I think mine has this and Fight Club. And I think the next generation after me has Joker as the equivalent. So I think every generation seems to get this exact kind of movie at some point.
That's a great. I'm going to nick that up here, Sue, because that's a great theory about filmmaking. I think you're absolutely right. So you've got a clip for this American Psycho. When it's on Film 4 tonight, you were saying, is that right?
Film 4 tonight at 11:05. I've got a clip for you, and this is Patrick Bateman, the yuppie stockbroker, and his boys sat around the conference room, broing out over some business cards.
Here we go.
Let's see Paul Allen's card. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my God. It even has a watermark. Something wrong? Patrick? You're sweating.
Oh dear, right then. You're right, a performance of a career. Although I loved him in that film, loved the wrong word. That film, The Mechanic, when he shed all that weight, is also a really great movie, disturbing film as well.
I thought you were going to say Reign of Fire.
Well, no, that's an absolute turkey. One of the worst films I've ever had. With him and Matthew McConaughey completely wasted that drivel. Anyway, let me go now to my recommendation. It's a lot earlier, but it's equally in its own way, I think, disturbing, and it's widely regarded and quite rightly as a masterpiece. I don't hold much truck with those people who say X, Y, and Z is the greatest film of all time. Recently, this one, though, by some critics, replaced Citizen Kane as the best film ever made. I don't know about that, because I think those kind of things are fairly meaningless, but it is an absolutely cracking movie. 11 o'clock this morning, so set the record for it, folks. On Film 4 again, it's Vertigo from 1958. It's Alfred Hitchcock, of course, Sir Alfred, James Stewart, Kim Novak, and it's basically a police officer who's chasing a suspect, is about to leap across a roof, and then he gets vertigo. He gets kind of the terrible fear of heights. A fellow officer loses his life. He's retired from the force. He's trying to get his life back on track. He can't cope with his weakness in himself. And he's asked by an old friend to keep an eye on his wife, because his wife is behaving slightly oddly. She's fixated on a woman who died long ago in the past. That woman committed suicide. James Stewart is tasked with trying to save her, and he fails. Or at least he believes he's failed. It's a great kind of twisting film. Brian De Palma's made at least 2 films, I think, that are kind of meditations on this. One is the underrated Body Double from the early 80s, in which bizarrely Frankie Goes to Hollywood appear at a kind of nightclub scene. But this is a brilliant film, a really cracking movie. It wasn't going to be Kim Novak originally. It was going to be a woman called Vera Ellen, who was better known perhaps for dancing. I think she was in, might have even been in White Christmas. But Kim Novak does a great job because she's slightly kind of featureless face, if that makes sense. She's almost very bland-looking face, very kind of charm. She worked with James Stewart in Bell, Book and Candle as well, which is more of a Halloween-y film. This is a great movie, though, folks. If you've never seen it, set the record. It's Vertigo, and here's some of the trailer.
Vertigo, a feeling of dizziness, a swimming in the head. Figuratively, a state in which all things seem to be engulfed in a whirlpool of terror, as created by Alfred Hitchcock in the story that gives new meaning to the word suspense.
So that's 11 o'clock this morning. You may well have seen it. Whenever it's on, I'll watch this film. We have to be kind of kept away from the TV because it's on at least once a month at the moment. What's your second? Your second recommendation is one I was going to go for, and you picked me at the post because, again, this is another masterpiece, is it not?
Well, if I don't pick The Exorcist, then I'm going to go to work on Monday morning, and Kermode's going to tear me a new one. So I kind of got to do it. It's one of the seminal horror works, isn't it? And you've got to watch The Exorcist every year around Halloween. It's one of those traditions. It's like The Shining. You watch it whether you like it or not, or watching Christmas Carol or Scrooged at Christmas. You do it because it's tradition. The Exorcist just so happens to be a masterpiece. William Peter Blatty, writing. William Friedkin directing. Seminal work, and of course one of the most notorious horror movies ever made. Led to protests and demonstrations outside cinemas, massive religious furor erupting around it, and at the centre of it all, great performances from the likes of Linda Blair, Max von Sydow, etc. Based on the novel of the same name, of course, follows a young girl who is of course possessed, and her mum then has to arrange for an exorcism, which leads to some of the most iconic sequences in all of cinema, really. Like top 20 most recognizable movies ever made. You could arguably include The Exorcist, I would say. I would say
top 10. Certainly you go to dread the simple thing of somebody walking up the stairs to Regan's room, the girl played by Linda Blair, because you know what's going to be lurking behind it. The thing I'd forgotten how good, when the film was re-released on the big screen a few years ago, I had the privilege of interviewing the director, William Friedkin, and I was talking to him about how the early bit, I'd forgotten, when they tried to get over this girl's behavioural problems, they subjected to all kinds of horrible medical procedures, and that looks as brutal as kind of medieval witch baiting. When you see those sequences when she's having kind of spine punctured and fluid drained out and stuff, you think, actually, that's also a kind of disturbing form of torture. And also, he'd come Friedkin I think before he directed this, he directed Norman Wisdom, was meant to be his breakthrough film, The Night They Read in Minsky's, about an American vaudeville strip show. So talk about two very different movies in one career. Great director. And you've got a clip for us, have you? I mean, be warned, folks, this is not, as I'm sure you've gathered, for the faint-hearted.
Hello, Regan. I'm a friend of your mother's. I'd like to help you.
You want to loosen the straps, huh?
I'm afraid you might hurt yourself, Regan.
I'm not Regan.
I see. Well, then, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Damien Karras.
And I'm the devil. Now kindly undo these straps.
If you're the devil, why not make the straps disappear?
That's much too vulgar a display of power, Karras.
Where's Regan?
In here with us.
Oh, dear. And the us includes Pazuzu, the demon, as well. So, getting chills thinking of that one. Now, my Saturday recommendation is my go-to film, one of my favourite films of all time, Lawrence of Arabia. It's on, I know, folks, I know I'm boring. It's on again on Great Action.
Classic.
Saturday morning, or Saturday afternoon, rather, 4:40pm. But I was thinking, I knew you were choosing a big horror film, and I looked at what else was available. Channel 4 have got on Saturday nights, they're showing the original Halloween from 1978. Channel 5 have got The Sixth Sense. They're both great kind of horror films in their way. And I did a bit of eeny, meeny, miny, mowing amongst the others that are available, and I end up mowing on Day of the Triffids on Talking Pictures TV from 1962, John Wyndham novel. It's about basically two things that happen to completely banjax humanity. One is some meteor comet passes overhead which blinds anybody who looks at it, and then we've been taking biofuel from these things called Triffids, and they're like mutant plants, and of course without human beings to keep them in line, they start roaming around and killing anybody they come across. So in that way it's quite a kind of an environmentally apocalyptic movie. It's on 11:05 Talking Pictures TV. I'm only recommending it because it won my little internal competition. 11:05. It also bizarrely stars Howard Keel, who's in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and all those great old Hollywood musicals before he turned up in Dallas. Interesting film. The Triffids themselves are frankly laughable, but when they're not on the screen, there's a nice sense of chill and kind of what's around the corner. And the scenes when the whole of Britain and the whole of the world pretty much is blind are very chilling indeed. So 11:05 tomorrow night, Saturday night, nice Halloween, ease yourself into something. I mean, The Exorcist is a proper film. This is just a nice bit of bubblegum for the mind. They're the Triffids.
The day of the Triffids, when the Earth orbits into a nightmare. When the solid world of everyday reality disintegrates. And the whole population is driven by fear towards insanity. The day of the Triffids, when destruction closes in from every side.
Pilot, is he blind too?
It's going to be starvation, fire, pestilence. Anyone caught in the middle of it doesn't stand a chance. I think we ought to get out of here and go on to Spain.
How can you know it's any better there?
I don't.
Yeah, why Spain? Why would you pick Spain to go to? Well, there's fire, pestilence and blindness everywhere. Anyway, that's 11:05. You have got the choice as well. I mean, I'd urge you to record and then watch The Exorcist, but also the original Halloween's great, as is in its own way The Sixth Sense. And my final recommendation is it's kind of Halloween classic, but it's a family horror comedy, if that makes sense. Channel 5, 5 p.m. Sunday afternoon, the cracking Beetlejuice. From now, I hadn't realised it was 1988 this was released. It was Tim Burton's film after Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I think, wasn't it? So the studio were getting to know his his twisted take on reality and filmmaking. He cast Michael Keaton as the main character, of course, before he was Batman for Tim Burton as well. And this, I just think, is a cracking film. And every now and again we get teased, don't we, that there might be a sequel to this. I kind of hope there isn't, because this is such a perfect film.
By all accounts, that sequel, Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian, is in fact coming. So we have that to look forward to.
Well, I hope it is Tim Burton, of course. And it's also around that time. In fact, it's a great afternoon on Channel 5. They've got The Goonies at 1 o'clock, the original Witches from 1990, 3:10, and then at 5:05, it's Beetlejuice, of course. And basically the setup is a young couple in America, very down-home, homespun, played by Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, die, don't realise they've died at first, then they realise they have died, and they're going about their lives quite normally until some live human beings move into the home, and they're incredibly obnoxious. Again, the Y word, a yuppie family. They've made it big, made money. So they summon Beetlejuice to try and get rid of these pesky living human beings. And of course, Beetlejuice is a mixed blessing. Here's some of the trailer.
Adam and Barbara are ghosts.
What's the good of being a ghost if you can't frighten people away?
Their house is being haunted by the living.
Maybe the house could use a little remodeling.
And they can't scare them into leaving.
They're dead. It's a little late to be neurotic.
So they're calling on Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice!
Who's no ordinary ghost.
You don't want his help.
Can you be scary?
What do you think of this?
Now, the party's over.
You want somebody out of the house? I want to get somebody out of your house.
But the fun has just begun.
It's showtime.
Apparently when Tim Burton committed to it, there was a script by somebody else that was much darker. He originally considered Sammy Davis Jr. to play Beetlejuice, and then Dudley Moore and possibly Sam Kinison, the not as well known, but very funny kind of full-on American comic who died in a car crash. I'm glad it was Michael Keaton, though. This is a one-off film, but what a film I think it is, Van.
It is, and it's just a great cast, with Alec Baldwin, younger Winona, Gina Davis, just an absolutely banging cast. But of course, no one can hold a candle to Michael Keaton just having the time of his life as, the eponymous Beetlejuice.
And you've gone for a film that I think I may have recommended this in the past in our conversations. It's the third Halloween film, nothing to do with Mike Myers or Jamie Lee Curtis, called Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This is a great forgotten classic, I think, this one, Ben, you've dug out for us.
Well, it is. This is the only one that doesn't feature Michael Myers. You say, Jamie Lee Curtis, though, does feature in the movie, strangely. She actually appears in voiceover form. I think she's the emergency announcer. So this is still produced by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, but it's written and directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who went on to do the It miniseries in 1990. This was envisioned by Carpenter, having already done Halloween 2, which incidentally I think is actually on before this. I think TCM is showing Halloween 2 and 3 back to back. But 2 I don't really love with Halloween. Halloween 3 seems to have become, even though it was quite reviled at the time, seems to have become a lot like On Her Majesty's Secret Service now, which is people are going back and being quite revisionist about it. Standalone adventure in which a small-town doctor played by Tom Atkins finds himself involved in this case, this vast conspiracy to use Halloween masks with microchips inside and a special magical song that interacts with a piece of the rock from Stonehenge to make people spout insects and snakes from their heads. Also, there are androids. It's a bizarre movie. It really is a bizarre movie. The clip is going to set it up nicely for just how deranged this is. It was the redheaded stepchild of the Halloween franchise right up until very recently when they released Halloween Ends, and I think we all now owe Tommy Lee Wallace an apology. But I've always thought it was quite an interesting film. I've always thought Tom Atkins' performance, more than anything, is worth it on its own, as you'll hear from the clip. But you'll see this on Sunday night, 11 p.m. on TCM/Turner Classic Movies, whatever you want to call it. I think it's worth a watch just for something really out there.
Great stuff. It's Halloween 3, TCM. I think it's called Watch TCM as well. On Sunday night, enjoy. Don't think that's quite the right word. I think he wants it stopped, doesn't he? That's a great recommendation, though, man. Another trio of crackers for us there. So tell us how we can hear your musings on the week's big releases on your off-screen podcast.
You can hear myself and Adam Ball from 6 a.m. on the Off-Screen Show on all good podcast platforms. Do tune in this week. It's a very fun show. We get to talk about Barbarian and Bros and so many fun movies. Also, you will get to find out what the coolest movie is that's on Freeview on Halloween night itself. I will say Stephen King, but definitely not the one you're thinking of.
Marvellous stuff. Okay, so download the Off-Screen podcast from Van and Adam Ball there and listen to it with me, Paul Ross, each and every Friday. Meanwhile, we had some music there from Season of the Witch. I'll get that out of your mind now with one of the great tunes from Beetlejuice, Harry Belafonte, one of his finest hours. Here's what gets the ghost gets them all dancing to this one. Go on, you know you want to. Shake what your mama gave you to this Calypso classic and say thank you very much indeed to Van Connor. We're live till 5. Get dancing.